It's easy for any fan to get excited about rookies, newcomers, and young players on their favorite teams. But when it comes to fantasy football, it's a whole new, different world. Some of these players no doubt make your favorite team better, and they enhance their chances of winning. But in fantasy football, these guys carry plenty of red flags. There's a strong chance that fantasy owners will regret taking some of these guys so early. So let's dive into our predictions for every NFL team's biggest fantasy bust in 2019. Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray. It's easy to buy the hype on a dual-threat quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner, but keep your expectations at a minimal level with Murray. He's playing behind a horrible line, and rookie head coach Cliff Kingsbury could very well struggle to adapt at the professional level. Murray is going to be drafted ahead of other established quarterbacks like Dak Prescott and Ben Roethlisberger. But be very careful here. Murray isn't going to just light it up on a weekly basis for your team. There will be plenty of ups and downs in his rookie year. Find a safer option at quarterback. Atlanta Falcons, Austin Hooper. Hooper is in a good position to finally break out, or is he? Obviously, Matt Ryan is going to target top wideout Julio Jones the most. Calvin Ridley, who enjoyed a superb rookie season, should be even better in 2019. The return of Devonta Freeman will boost Atlanta's rushing game too. Hooper is arguably Matt Ryan's fourth or fifth best option in the passing game. You should try to find a tight end who has a worse supporting cast. This isn't anything against Hooper, but it's just going to be hard for him to repeat his performance in 2018. Baltimore Ravens, Mark Ingram. Ingram posted 1,000-yard seasons for the New Orleans Saints in 2016 and 17. He lost his starting duties to Alvin Kamara and saw his role reduced in 2018. Now Ingram joins a Baltimore team that loves running the RB by committee system. We do love the Ingram pick for Baltimore, but he is not somebody you should take in fantasy. Lamar Jackson is going to run the ball aplenty. Duh. And you know that Gus Edwards, who had 718 rushing yards last season, and rookie Justice Hill will receive a good amount of carries as well. But fantasy owners will draft Mark Ingram, the name, and not Mark Ingram, the player, in 2019. We know a lot of owners will be regretting this pick. Buffalo Bills, LeSean McCoy. The perennial Pro Bowler had his worst season yet in 2018, and there isn't any reason to expect a bounce-back year in 2019. McCoy is 31 years of age, which is ancient for running backs. Not only that, but the Bills have one crowded running back depth chart. The Bills signed ageless wonder Frank Gore and former Jacksonville Jaguars standout TJ Yeldon before drafting Florida Atlantic product Devin Singletary. With three other reliable RBs playing behind McCoy, the latter won't receive as many carries, especially with his play declining. But again, just watch people take McCoy earlier than they should simply because of his name. Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton. The shoulder injury hampered Newton in the second half as the Panthers collapsed following a promising 6-2 start. It's unknown how much Newton will play in 2019 and how effective he will be. Regardless, the Panthers will be looking to run the ball a ton with workhorse running back Christian McCaffrey. That means Newton won't be lining up the scoreboard. There are safer options than Newton, and a handful of quarterbacks are way better for your fantasy team. But based on past production, you know Newton will go earlier than he should. Chicago Bears, Anthony Miller. Drafted by the Bears in the second round a year ago, Miller caught 33 passes for 423 yards and 7 touchdowns in his rookie season. Many expect Miller to have a breakout year under Matt Nagy, but we're not seeing it. Allen Robinson remains the Bears' #1 receiver, while do-it-all running back Tariq Cohen promises to eat up a large portion of Mitch Trubisky's targets. Speedy wideout Taylor Gabriel and tight end Trey Burton will play prominent roles in the passing game too. Add it all up and you can see why Miller will struggle to perform as a top fantasy receiver in 2019. Cincinnati Bengals, A.J. Green. The 7-time Pro Bowler missed 7 games in 2018. He's expected to miss time in 2019 as well as undergoing ankle surgery. That alone should scare fantasy users away from Green. Not only that, but Green is entering his age 31 season and Tyler Boyd stepped up as the Bengals' top receiver last season. 2017 first-round pick John Ross could also enjoy a breakout year assuming he stays healthy. So when Green gets back, he'll be a 31-year-old coming off an ankle injury, and he may not even be the Bengals' top receiver anymore. Yeah, you should totally stay away from him. Cleveland Browns, Jarvis Landry. A move from Miami to Cleveland didn't hurt Landry's production in the slightest. He formed terrific chemistry with Baker Mayfield and finished with 81 receptions for 976 yards and 4 touchdowns. But Landry is on this list because of one man, Odell Beckham Jr. The Browns acquired the Pro Bowl wideout in a blockbuster trade, so with that, Landry becomes a #2 receiver. That means he could struggle to perform as a top 20 receiver in 2019. He's a good later option round, but Landry is not a receiver that any fantasy user should be taking too early. Dallas Cowboys, Amari Cooper. I mean, the Cowboys don't really have any true fantasy value players outside of Dak Prescott Ezekiel Elliott, and Amari Cooper. There's no one else on the Dallas offense that people should be trying hard to get. Thanks to an excellent 9-game audition in Dallas last year, Cooper became a must-have for fantasy users in 2018. But can he repeat the jaw-dropping second-half performance from a year ago? Defenses will be bringing the double team a lot more, that's for sure. Not only that, but Cooper was dealing with a foot injury in the offseason, so that's a bit worrisome. Let's just say that there are about 10 to 15 receivers we'd be more comfortable selecting before Cooper. Denver Broncos Royce Freeman. Philip Lindsay wound up taking over the backfield in the Mile High City last year, and there's little reason to believe he'll relinquish the starting role in 2019. A lot of people might try to target Freeman in a later round, hoping he'll steal the #1 duties from Lindsay. Don't count on it. Plus, we kind of expect Denver to throw the ball a lot more with Cortland Sutton, Emmanuel Sanders, and Noah Fant rounding out a nice pass-catching core. Stay away from Freeman. Detroit Lions TJ Hawkinson. He's one of the most hyped-up tight end prospects, but that doesn't mean Hawkinson will light it up in 2019. We don't know how productive Matthew Stafford will be as he recovers from a nagging back injury. Plus, the Lions will likely want to run the ball more with the prized RB in Kerryon Johnson. And you know it's rare for a tight end to perform big in his rookie year. Rob Gronkowski and Jimmy Graham weren't exactly stars in their first NFL seasons. Hawkinson will be a must-have tight end for years to come, but there are a handful of safer options here. Since there are only so many Pro Bowl caliber tight ends, however, we know that users will overvalue Hawkinson. Green Bay Packers Aaron Jones. In what was a down year for the Packers last year, Jones still produced nicely in the rushing game with 728 yards and 8 touchdowns. The Packers hope to regain their form as an offensive juggernaut under Matt LaFleur, but that doesn't mean Jones is necessarily a must-have in fantasy. Jones has dealt with knee and hamstring injuries. He compiled a mere 35 receptions through his first 2 NFL seasons. Jones is simply not a pass-catching running back, so that hurts his value a bit. But since he's the lead back in Green Bay's offense, fantasy owners are all over Jones. Very high chance that he flops here. Houston Texans Duke Johnson. With Lamar Miller missing all of 2019, Duke Johnson slots in as the new lead running back, but the latter has been used in a pass-catching role throughout his career, so it's impossible to tell how many carries he'll receive. The Texans are a pass-heavy offense now too. Not sure Bill O'Brien is keen on using his running backs a lot, not with Deshaun Watson getting better every year. So we'd advise you don't go crazy overvaluing Duke Johnson just yet. Lots of owners will reach for him in the early rounds because of Miller's injury. Don't be one of those owners. Indianapolis Colts Eric Ebron. After 4 disappointing years in the Motor City, Eric Ebron finally broke out in his first year with the Indianapolis Colts, notching 66 catches for 750 yards and 13 touchdowns. But a repeat performance is easier said than done. Not to mention fellow tight end Jack Doyle promises to take away some targets from Ebron. Doyle had a career year in 2017, but he was limited to 6 games last season. And the Colts added Devin Funchess in free agency and Paris Campbell in the draft. So yeah, it ain't going to be easy for Ebron to repeat last season's performance, not with 3 other pass-catching weapons set to play big roles alongside him and T.Y. Hilton. Jacksonville Jaguars Leonard Fournette. Injuries have limited Fournette to 21 games through his first 2 seasons. He was the rock of Jacksonville's offense in 2017, but Fournette was limited to 8 games last season, and he wasn't exactly productive on the field. You should always stay away from injury-prone running backs. The Jaguars don't have much depth at RB, however, so Fournette is going earlier than he should in plenty of drafts. Doesn't mean you'll get good value from him, though. And the Jaguars wouldn't be as run-heavy on offense now, not after signing Super Bowl 52 MVP Nick Foles. It would be no surprise if they became a pass-first offense here in 2019. Kansas City Chiefs Damien Williams. We're kind of nitpicking here since all of Kansas City's top offensive players are must-haves for fantasy football. This includes lead back Damien Williams, who took over as the #1 RB after the Chiefs released Kareem Hunt. But prior to last season, Williams has never been more than a mediocre backup running back in the NFL. Andy Reid has a way of making the most out of his backs. But we couldn't be surprised if injuries or poor play forced Reid to turn to someone like Darwin Thompson at some point in the season. You just wait and see. Los Angeles Chargers Hunter Henry. The young tight end was supposed to break out in 2018. Unfortunately, he suffered an ACL tear in May and missed the entire season. So Henry's breakout year was put on hold, and now there's hope that he'll be able to piece it all together in 2019. But hold your horses. Not only does Henry have to show he's fully recovered from a gruesome injury, but he's got a ton of players to steal targets from. Phillip Rivers is a lethal receiving duo in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, plus some pretty good pass-catching backs in Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler. Henry should be a key part of the Chargers' offense in 2019, but there are several tight ends that are better for fantasy than him. If you took him early, we simply credit you for having plenty of guts. Los Angeles Rams Todd Gurley. In most standard fantasy leagues, Gurley was most certainly one of the top picks made. There aren't many explosive running backs of his caliber after all, but any fantasy player that took Gurley with one of their first 2 picks will most likely be disappointed come season's end. The Rams have apparently decided that Gurley won't be a bell cow running back anymore. They'll be cutting back on his workload in order to keep his knee fresh. Gurley won't be posting over 1,200 yards and 500-plus receiving yards in a single season anymore. He's not the same must-have option for fantasy owners compared to previous years. Miami Dolphins Kenyon Drake. With Frank Gore leaving for Buffalo, Drake becomes the undisputed number 1 back in Miami. In fact, he's the only offensive player on Miami that deserves a real look. Josh Rosen and Ryan Fitzpatrick won't get it done at QB, and the Dolphins don't have any big-time playmakers in the pass-catching game, so opposing defenses will have an easy task of stacking the box against Drake. Or maybe Rosen breaks out and helps Miami turn into a pass-happy offense? Either way, the odds of Drake turning into a game-changer for fantasy leagues just aren't great. Minnesota Vikings Stephon Diggs. The Vikings fired offensive coordinator John DeFilippo in December of last season and replaced him with Kevin Stefanski. Under the latter, Minnesota began running the ball a lot more, and Stephon Diggs didn't produce as much. He only logged 14 receptions for 106 yards over the final 3 weeks. The Vikings rebuilt their O-line this offseason, which gives Stefanski even better reason to run the ball a lot more than Dalvin Cook. Adam Thielen is an absolute must-have, but Diggs, Minnie's number 2 receiver, doesn't fall into that category. Better off letting someone else take him early in your draft. New England Patriots Josh Gordon. The NFL reinstated Josh Gordon for the 2019 season, but we've been down this road before. Can we really trust Gordon to stay healthy for a full season? Obviously, everybody is rooting for him, but you just don't know if it'll happen. Not only that, but with a 42-year-old quarterback, the Patriots will be looking to run the ball more with Sonny Michel, James White, and Damien Harris. Julian Edelman is the top wideout in New England, not Josh Gordon. Gordon is worthy of a very late selection, but this isn't somebody that any fantasy player should be taking in the early or mid rounds. New Orleans Saints Latavius Murray. Having lost Mark Ingram in free agency, the Saints found a new number 2 back in veteran Latavius Murray, who should be a fine complement to Alvin Kamara. But if you strike out on landing Kamara in your draft, you shouldn't feel forced to take his sidekick. Murray is only going to see so many reps and plays in the Saints offense. Kamara will eat up most of the work in the backfield, not Murray. But we know so many people will take Murray simply because he plays on the Saints offense, and people expect him to take over the Mark Ingram role. We're not banking on that happening, which is why we're more than willing to stay away from Murray in 2019. New York Giants Sterling Shepard. The Giants signed slot receiver Golden Tate in the offseason, which obviously means he'll line up inside. The G-men have been trying to top wideout Sterling Shepard on the outside. That's not his natural spot and is going to cause headaches for him and Eli Manning. Shepard has never caught a touchdown pass when lining up on the inside either. It's simple math. The guy will be a fantasy bust for you if the Giants force him to stay on the outside. Better hope he eventually moves back into the slot. New York Jets Le'Veon Bell. After sitting out the entire 2018 season, Bell signed a 4-year pact worth $52.5 million with the New York Jets. Now, we do think Bell will perform nicely under head coach Adam Gase, but don't get too optimistic and assume Bell will regain the Pro Bowl form he displayed in Pittsburgh. Bell was led by one of the league's elite O-lines all those years in the Steel City. The Jets aren't exactly dominant in the trenches. If anything, Bell might be more effective in the pass-catching game for the Jets. He'll be good, but there are too many risks for us to value him as a top 5 running back. You folks who grabbed him in round 1 could end up regretting that decision when it's all said and done. Oakland Raiders Antonio Brown. There was never any way Antonio Brown would put up the same numbers with Derek Carr that he put up with Ben Roethlisberger. And now Brown has decided to cause a lot of drama because of the league's helmet rules. This is probably not going to end well. There are a ton of fantasy users out there who value Brown as a top 3 or 5 receiver, but his attitude problems and the fact that he's going to an inferior team scare us big time. You can argue that Brown isn't a top 10 receiver at all. We're sure there are plenty of AB owners that will be looking to trade him by midseason. Philadelphia Eagles Miles Sanders. The Eagles drafted Sanders with the 53rd selection, and it's easy to be smitten with a player of his skill set, playing Doug Peterson's offense. While it's going to be hard for Sanders to outshine Jordan Howard, who figures to be the lead back in Philly, the Eagles have a ton of pass-catching weapons too, so Howard himself might not perform like a top-tier fantasy running back either. Sanders is no doubt a special player, but Philly's large set of offensive playmakers means it'll be hard for him to do a whole lot in his rookie year. Pittsburgh Steelers Ben Roethlisberger. Many think the Steelers will be just fine without Antonio Brown, that the team will rebound now that they're drama-free in the locker room. That may end up being the case, but losing AB simply means Roethlisberger's numbers will go down. You simply don't replace a player of his caliber. Roethlisberger had 5,129 passing yards and 34 touchdowns. Without Brown, those numbers will regress big time. Not to mention the Steelers have a good reason to run the ball a lot more with James Conner leading the backfield. San Francisco 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo. The 49ers lost Garoppolo for the season in Week 3 of 2018, and they've rebuilt the supporting cast around him. If he's healthy, Jimmy G should finally break out and push the 49ers towards playoff contention. But Garoppolo shouldn't be valued as a top 20 quarterback, though we're sure many overvalued him. It's always risky taking a QB coming off of a serious injury, but keep in mind Garoppolo hasn't even played a full season yet. We don't know how he'll perform over the course of a 16-week campaign. Way too much risk here. Seattle Seahawks Tyler Lockett. This special teams weapon stepped up as Seattle's top wide receiver in 2018, tallying 57 receptions for 965 yards and 10 touchdowns. With Doug Baldwin retired, it's easy to believe that Lockett will receive even more targets, right? Not so fast. The Seahawks are big on rookie DK Metcalf, arguably the best wide receiver prospect in this year's draft. And of course, the Seahawks are always a run-first team. With Russell Wilson, Rashad Penny, and Chris Carson leading the way, that's not going to change. Lockett may have been a great mid-round pick, but owners everywhere are taking him way too early, and we just know they'll be disappointed. He isn't a very high-value selection. Tampa Bay Buccaneers Peyton Barber. Barber is coming off of his best season to date, where he rushed for 871 yards and 5 touchdowns. But new Tampa Bay head coach Bruce Arians seems keen on using different running backs in 2019. Ronald Jones and Andre Ellington figure to get their fair share of carries too. And of course, the Bucs are likely going to be a more pass-happy team under Arians. Stay away from Barber and all Tampa Bay running backs. Nobody knows who will lead this backfield. Tennessee Titans Corey Davis. After a lackluster rookie year, Davis broke out with 891 receiving yards in 2018. But there's a good reason to believe that Davis won't be a fantasy darling in his third year. Why? Simply because there are more Titans players that will take targets away from Davis. Pro Bowl tight end Delaney Walker returns after missing all but one game last year. The Titans also signed slot receiver Adam Humphries before drafting Ole Miss product A.J. Brown. Davis is one of 4 primary pass-catching targets in Tennessee. Last year, he was Mariana's only reliable pass-catching weapon. Now you can see why he stands to be a fantasy disappointment after a 2018 season. Washington Redskins Adrian Peterson. Everyone knows that Adrian Peterson is no longer an MVP candidate and Pro Bowl caliber running back. But he turned back the clock last season and had 1,042 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. Don't expect AP to repeat that. Come on!
Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on.
A 34-year-old rushing for 1,000 yards? Not happening. Not to mention the Redskins also carry Chris Thompson, Darius Geis, and Samaje Perine on the depth chart. It's reasonable to think Washington will have a RB by committee approach. And they'll probably be passing a lot more with Dwayne Haskins. Peterson simply won't be the good old reliable option at running back this time around. Who do you think will be the biggest fantasy bust in 2019? Join us in the comment section down below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps us out a ton and we appreciate it. This is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.